Hey Spartans, Josh here. A quick content note before we get into this week's episode. You're about to meet one of 5 guest speakers that have courageously volunteered to contribute their experiences, knowledge, and support to the ongoing mental health crisis our nation is facing. For the whole month of May, I will be rolling out a 5-episode series interviewing survivors of suicide, as well as leaders in mental health awareness. We're sharing our stories of recovery in hopes that they save at least one life and hopefully many more. If you're not in the headspace to receive these stories and testimonies, please stop the podcast here. Thank you for listening, and please take care of yourselves. Let's go. 2019, not a good year, right? You dub it the pit of hell. Walk our listeners through that journey and why it was dubbed the pit of hell by Heather Kittelson.
Yeah. I mean, I was working part-time, Josh, as a foundation director at a big nonprofit while having the 4 kids, 3 in diapers, and I was way above my tolerance of what I could do for life at that point. And so I wrote my letter and I was ready to head off to the liquor store to go get 2 big bottles of vodka, and I had prescription pills set aside, and I was going to OD that day. When I was sitting on my bed, I laid back down because I had the shakes so bad. The 2 oldest went to school. The 2 youngest had gotten the car with Amos and left, and he was headed straight to the office. And when he was standing in the doorway, I remember I looked at him and I just was like, "What are you doing here?" And he said he really felt like God told him he needed to go home. And I'm so grateful that he did, because if he wouldn't have followed that still small voice, I would not be here today.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this week we are switching things up. All month we've been focused on men's mental health. Because it is May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and I just feel that men's mental health has not gotten the attention that is deserved. But we wouldn't be the men we are without the partnership of strong, leading women. And we're recording this episode the Monday after Mother's Day, so the timing couldn't be more perfect to have my new friend Heather Kittelson on. So Heather and I met about a month ago in Iowa through our mutual friend Jordan Montgomery at a John Gordon event, and is called the Power of Positive Leadership Summit, right? Okay. Or Power of Positive Leadership, I think is what it was titled. Anyhow, so we're sitting at a table and we get talking, and Heather, here's the thing, like, being friends with me comes with some consequences. Like, I'm going to make you get really vulnerable really quick, and Heather was one to do that. So without further ado, I want to introduce Heather Kittelson to the show. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. This is awesome.
So Heather's a mother of 4, and I just want to get that out there because we were talking about our kids' ages before, but today we're going to talk about a journey of mental health, suicide, and alcoholism, and she's going to share her vulnerable story as we are in this Mental Health Awareness Month, and want to make sure that we get all different perspectives. So I invited her on to make sure that we have a different perspective, a woman's perspective, and also a mother's perspective, because it is something that we're seeing more and more touching our kids these days as well. So before we get into your story and testimony, I want to get the basics, as I know you have spent a lot of time over the last few years educating audiences nationwide. So I think most people know this, but maybe not. Like, what is alcoholism, and why are we talking about it during Mental Health Awareness Month?
Well, alcoholism is a disease. And there's so much that goes into alcoholism. And through my journey, I have done a lot of studying on neuroscience and the way that our brain works when it comes to addiction, just in general, not even alcoholism, but just addiction. And it's all consuming, just like any type of depression or any type of mental illness. It's all day long, every day, every second, every minute. You are thinking about it if you are actively involved in your addiction.
So it's a mental disease is what you're saying, correct?
It is.
Yep. And from your research, how much of it is hereditary versus non-hereditary?
There's a lot of aspects. Mine is generation. I have it in my genes. We have it pretty thick, multi, like grandma, grandpas, aunts, uncles, great grandparents. It is ran in our family heavily, and we've had actually a lot of people die from it. There's also the aspect of, just the carnal, the earthly part of it, where I think it can be just drinking too much. There is definitely a point to whatever circumstances you have in life. There are those who drink excessively. However, if you have it, you have it. The alcoholism, it's a whole different concept or a whole different playing field, because there's an on switch and an off switch. And when I refer to the on and off switch, a lot of people, I guess a good example for you, Josh, would be when I was at Mankato State, I could drink football players who were 250 pounds heavier than I was under the table. I could drink Jack Daniels on the rocks, and I could actively go through the entire evening into the morning until 4:00 in the morning. And I would be tucking people in, still walking, talking. Our switch doesn't ever get shut off. So it's like this, it's a roller coaster of, through the withdrawal is the bottom. So then you drink more, or you drink to start to knock the hangover or to knock the withdrawal out. And it's just normal people who have an off switch. And in the world of alcoholism or addiction, you guys are considered normal. We actually use that term, normal. And you have the off switch. So you have a few drinks and you're kind of like, I'm good. And then you can stop. Whereas alcoholism, you just want more and more and more and more, and you function and you walk and you talk. It's the definition of insanity, like people refer to.
When did you realize you didn't have the off switch?
I realized probably, when I've been married before, and in college, I didn't have the education or no one really kind of talked to me about it. And this is probably why I'm such an advocate on and educating people now, is I never had anybody say to me like, hey, you really like to drink a lot. And when you drink excessively and are still walking and talking and breathing like a normal person. That's probably not normal. That you should maybe consider drinking less or looking into possibly getting help. No one ever told me that. Like, I just was whooping it up thinking I was someone that just had a super high tolerance. But then when
just the life of the party, right?
Yeah, I always was. Everybody always told me, they're like, Heather, you're so much fun. You're the life of the party. And I took that as a huge compliment until I wasn't. And so married to my husband now, Amos, that was when I started to sneak the alcohol. That's when I started to realize that the one or the two that we were having, because we could drink wine together and we could sit together around a campfire. But I all of a sudden started hiding it. And I think that's when I was like, wow, so this isn't right. Like, Amos wouldn't care if I was drinking. And I could stop drinking while I was pregnant. And so then I always justified. So there's the justification in an alcoholic's brain that we're all the time, because we never want to admit it until we admit it, because then once we do, though, we have to quit, right? So once we say we have a problem, then that's the scary part for an alcoholic, because we don't know what it'd be like to live without it, because we've always had it. But when it started to get really, really bad was when I started to hide it. And then Amos was like, wow, you're really tipsy after a couple glasses of wine. And then I would lie. And then the manipulation started. And so that, I would say, probably about 10 years ago, when him and I first started hanging out. And then once we got married, right in the beginning, I was like, there's something not right.
Yeah. So fast forward and maybe fill in the gaps a little bit for us, but 2019, not a good year, right? You dub it the pit of hell for yourself. Walk our listeners through that journey, or maybe fill in the gaps between then and why it was dubbed the pit of hell by Heather Kittelson.
Yeah, I do. I call it walking in hell on earth is kind of where I ended up. It started, so leading up to Evelyn, is where kind of, I guess, the pivotal place was for me. When Evelyn was born, I developed postpartum depression. And I'm naturally a very happy person. I don't have a lot of emotional roller coasters. I grew up with 3 older brothers. And so I grew up playing sports and hanging out with the dudes. Like I just always got along with everybody and all different popularity groups in high school and college and just different. I knew something was wrong when I couldn't feel anything, when I couldn't feel happy, I couldn't feel sad. I didn't give 2 craps about life right after I had Evelyn. So people warned me, or people had said that they had postpartum, a lot of my friends, and I could never relate. I could always have empathy for them, but I was kind of like, gosh, I don't know what that's like, because I've had 3 kids and my pregnancies were great. And Evelyn then sparked that. And the funny thing is I did not necessarily want to have 4 kids. I was kind of done at 3. And then my husband wanted to go for a 3rd or 4th. And I'm so grateful, even though it was the toughest time of my life, I'm so grateful that we did, because I kind of look at Evelyn now as the little girl who saved my life. Because so she was born in April of 2018, and then December 5th of 2019 was the day that I was going to take my life. It had gotten so bad that I was puking blood. I was swollen, my whole body. Like I look back at pictures, and when you are drinking excessively and you're not eating, we don't eat when we're into kind of the lowest pit of our addiction. And so we get just our bloated, and yet we don't have any muscle mass, no fat on us, barely at all. It's all water retention or retaining the water. But I remember waking up that morning, and the day before, I had decided that I could not live the way that I was living anymore, nor did I want to put my family through it. And so, you know, people, when they talk about suicide, they talk a lot about how it's one of the most selfish things that you could ever do. And to me, or to someone who is looking in the mirror and thinking, there's no way that I'm going to put my kids through a lifetime of pain with me actively drinking, or my husband for that matter. Like our house was chaos. Amos he was like, I just don't know what to do with you. I know you have this postpartum depression, but I just don't know what to do with you. And I was lying about drinking. So he just thought it was a malnutrition. Like I just wasn't taking care of myself, which I wasn't. But that whole, I was working part-time, Josh, as a foundation director at a big nonprofit. And I was helping him out with his technology business while having the 4 kids, 3 in diapers. And I was way above my tolerance of what I could do for life at that point. And so I wrote my letter, and I was ready to head off to the liquor store to go get 2 big bottles of vodka. And I had prescription pills set aside, and I was going to OD that day. And when I was sitting on my bed, I laid back down because I had the shakes so bad. And I was going through withdrawal. And they actually, if you do the research on, and someone can probably correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure that with alcoholism, when you're going through withdrawals, the reason that they have so many of like all the treatment centers and all the different places that they do the detoxing, they have you so heavily monitored because you can die in the detox process with alcohol, because you're just all the poisons in your body, and your organs start to shut down. So I could feel that physically happening to me. And so I lay down, and the next thing I look up and I see Amos standing in the doorway, and they had all left. The 2 oldest went to school. The 2 youngest had gotten in the car with Amos and left, and he was headed straight to the office. And Amos is one where he runs his own business. So he had to he goes to work. He doesn't work from home. And when he was standing in the doorway, I remember I looked at him and I just was like, what are you doing here? And he said that he got to this specific road And he really felt like God told him he needed to go home. And it wasn't like an audible voice at all. But he just said there was a strong desire, a strong feeling in his heart that he needed to go home. And I'm so grateful that he did, because if he wouldn't have followed that still small voice, I would not be here today. And so that led up to the day of, if I'm not going to die today, I'm going to live. And there's a whole bunch that happens right after that, obviously, but you kind of wanted me to talk through up to the point of December 5th. So,
yeah, well, I think that I've said this often, to pay attention to the whispers. And I remember you telling me that, and just gave me the chills, because like you said, if Amos didn't pay attention to that whisper from God, that you wouldn't be here, and he'd be without his spouse, and your kids would be without their mom. And that's just, I mean, wow. So, all right. So the best that we can. So what happened after that? What made the choice? Because a lot of times people get to rock bottom in alcoholism, addiction, all that different stuff, and they have that, and they don't necessarily get the help that they need right away. What lead us to the next part? Where did you actually go? Okay, I'm gonna live, and then you go to what happens next? Because I want people to hear and feel that.
It definitely was not okay, let's go. I was kicking and screaming, man. I struggled, to be honest, but Amos, he knew something was wrong, and he still could not. I was still lying, and I didn't tell him what I was planning to do that day. He knew something was really off with me, and he just said, hey, I am going to work from home today, and I'm not sure what's going on with you. But if you need me, I'll be in the office. And so I laid back down, and I was bawling. I was hysterically bawling, thinking to myself, like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get out of the house? I was still going to go through with my plan until it was about 30 minutes later. And my dear friend, Kate, who had really been speaking into my life for about 3-4 years, she crawled into bed with me and wrapped her arms around me in bed. And all she had to say was, Heather, it's time. And I was kind of like, well, what does she mean? And next thing you know, we're sitting in the living room, she's holding me, and we go through this whole entire process of like inpatient, outpatient. I laid it all out to Kate, and Amos came out, and it ended up being a mini little intervention. And I just, everything came out, because Kate has a way about her. I believe she is my earthly angel, because Amos I probably would not have opened up to Amos that day. I actually know, I know I wouldn't have, because I've had plenty of opportunities leading up to it to talk to him. And I just, we're a little bit stubborn when it comes to our spouses. I wished it wasn't like that, but didn't want to show my weaknesses or any of my flaws or my pain to Amos for whatever reason, even though it was very obvious. But Kate sat with me, and we talked through outpatient, inpatient, what it would look like. As a mom, I was like, well, the house will fall apart. What will I do if I go into inpatient? And how will the kids survive? Like, Amos throws Cheerios at them. Like, he doesn't know how to cook. I just remember thinking, like, the world will fall apart if I go into inpatient. And Kate looked at me, and she was like, Heather, you realize what you were planning today. Like, you realize there's no, like, we got you. You have to go get better for your kids, for you, and for your husband. There's no questions being asked here. Like, please tell me that you realize you need to go get help. And so there were 12 days there, Josh, that trying to find an open bed, by the way, for any type of treatment center or mental health, any type of behavioral health, like, the waiting is a long time. I don't know what the crisis is going to be like for our nation, but the wait period in our area of where I live, because I'm currently working in that field of helping people find just different places they can go to get help. And it's the beds. The beds are like, they're all full. Nobody can get in, even counselors in different places. It's like the waiting list is months. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah, either that, or if you have money, you can get it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have money, you can't, is basically what I'm hearing.
Yes, that is an issue. So I was able to get a bed at a local treatment center called Woodstock, it's called New Life Treatment Center. And I had 12 days in between December 5th to the day that I checked in, December 17th, where I had to go tell my employer. I had to tell my family. I had to tell my employer, but I was choosing to tell my friends. And so there were a handful of really close friends of mine that I asked if we could meet. And when we met, I was telling them that I have to go away for 30 days to an inpatient treatment center. And the scary part about that was that every single one of them who I had been around, I would say that there was a lot of times I would isolate towards the end because I really felt like people were starting to figure me out, even just physically. But I had an excuse because I just had a baby and I got 4 kids and I have a lot going on. So I always had excuses of why I looked tired or why I felt tired or why I was acting funny. But when I told them, they would say, like, I had no idea. Heather, I had no idea it was this bad. Like, why didn't you say anything? And it's across the board with friends and with family. It's like, they may know, they may not know, but they don't know how to approach you. They don't know really what to say. And that is another thing I really am passionate about, educating for the families on how to approach someone if they feel like something is going on, or even just the right things to say versus, hey, you look really crappy. Like, what's going on? There's a gentle
you look
way.
Like shit today. What's wrong?
Yeah, like, come on, you look really fat and bloated. So there's a tactful way to approach people when you're concerned. But when the people in the community, I am a community leader in our community. I am always out and about. I'm doing things and talking with people. And my number one God-given gift is connection. So I'm always connecting people and finding ways to bring community together to celebrate life and do. So when I started to isolate myself, that's when people started to get a little bit concerned, but still nobody approached me. No one really dug in and asked, like, hey, are you okay? So my friends, when they told me that was very concerning for me and for them. The fact that we can hide it, that I could hide it as well as I did. And so
let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
I want others to be able to see this isolation thing. So I want you to talk a little bit more about how you hid from your friends and family, your disease, right? So like, because I think you even told me you were completely functioning during the day while drinking, taking your kids to school or whatever other events, stuff of that nature. So I want others, and then segue to that is like, how can others that are potentially seeing some signs in loved ones, see through their hiding?
I, now being sober for 3.5 years and speaking out and on stages, talking to audiences, people will reach out to me privately on instant message or privately. I even give my cell number out because I want to be available for people. And if I can't help people, I will make sure to help find someone that can help them. But, the hiding and the isolation, we think we're hiding. We think people don't know, but the people that are reaching out to me and asking questions are like, there's a mom that shows up to her kids' games and you can smell it on her, or people at church have noticed. So people are talking behind each other's backs. And so the isolation piece of, we are isolating, but we can't fully isolate, right? Like, we still have a life that we have to live. And if you have kids and you have a husband and you have a social life and you have the things, there are certain behaviors and certain mannerisms that addiction and alcoholism bring out in every single one of us that you can look out for and you can watch for. And there's the the whole going up to somebody and just being like, hey, I saw you go back in the house a couple times. Are you sipping on a bottle? Like there's, because that is the truth. Like there is I have to go to the bathroom multiple times, or I have to go do this, or I have to go do that. It's like there's all these mannerisms that are very similar to one another across the board for most people that are living in the addiction. So we can't fully isolate ourselves, but those around us, we think we're getting away with it. And I really did think I was getting away with it all the time. And most of the times I was, but now that I know better, I like to help other people be aware of some of those signs, because as people are asking me, Josh, it's like, yeah, as much as you don't want to think that's what's happening, that's what's happening. Like we have to be real with one another, and we have to talk about the really tough stuff because it could save a life. I mean, yeah.
And then, so they see those signs,
Mm-hmm.
and then what do you think's the best way to approach that loved one?
My family said to me after the fifth. So after the fifth, and I was telling them that I needed to go get help. They had said to me that they were planning to talk to me on Christmas, that they had noticed that I had been drinking more than usual, like at Thanksgiving or just holidays prior to that. And the unfortunate truth of that is I would have been gone by then. So their chance of talking to me wouldn't have happened. And that's kind of the ugly truth of it, is that there's really no right or wrong way. When it's their time to hit rock bottom, they're going to hit rock bottom, whether you've talked to them or not, or, so the timing is never right. The timing is never perfect. How you approach them. For me, if they would have done an intervention, if I would have walked into a room with all of them trying to confront me, that would have been awful. That would have been, I don't recommend that at all. There's different levels of severity of people in their addiction, right? So someone just approached me the other day. I was sitting out having coffee, and they walked up to me and they said, hey, you're Heather, and you've been speaking out quite a bit on alcoholism, and I want to talk to you about my brother-in-law. And I said, sure, sit down. What's going on? And they mentioned that he won't even come barely out of his apartment. The only time he comes out is to go to the liquor store to go buy liquor. And then he's just drinking himself to death, and they don't know what to do. He stopped going to work. He can't keep a job. He's lost tons of weight. And so he is at the rock bottom of his addiction. And so how do you approach someone like that? How do you go in and actually make sense to them? And the comment was, well, I think he does just want to die. And no, he doesn't. If after Kate talked to me, after Kate sat with me, and she's like, Heather, you can get through this. You can, with the community that you have, the people that love you. We love you. We see you. We love you. We want you to be a part of our life. Those kind of conversations with the individuals, because at their rock bottom or at their moments, there's so much shame. There's so much hurt. There's so much regret. They don't know how to get themselves out of all the lies and all the manipulation that we've put ourselves into. And so it's like, there is no right time. There is no right thing to say, but to say something along the lines of just, hey, I love you. We love you. We want to be here to help support you. This is not the end. This doesn't have to be the end. You can live a very vibrant, beautiful life beyond this. I know of other people that have been here who have crawled their way out, and they're thriving and they're doing amazing. So it's just that hope piece, giving them hope, giving them just this glimmer that I don't care what you've done. I don't care how bad it's gotten, the lies you've told. I don't care about any of that. We just want you here. We just want you to live and be a part of our family. We miss you, So the worst thing you could do, Josh, and I see it done all the time, is shame on you. You are a disgrace. You have done so much wrong in this family. Every time you're around, you're drunk, like, okay, well, that's not helpful, So there is definitely a right and a wrong, but there's no way that staying silent is the answer, right? Like, you want to approach them, and with grace and with love is the way that I would do it. Don't shame anybody. We already feel so shameful and so hurt and so terrible about ourselves that we don't really need anybody else to point a finger. And we know we've hurt everyone around us. Like, we can't have this addiction or have an alcoholic or be an alcoholic without hurting everyone around us. There's not one person in our path that we don't hurt, truly.
Yeah.
And that's and
not the least of all is yourself. Right.
Yes.
So that's such a big thing. So 2 big points that you brought up there is, one, don't wait, because you don't know if it's going to be too late. And that, then you're going to wrestle with a whole different set of guilt, having had this thought that you're going to wait. And the second thing was around the brother-in-law that you mentioned, not yours, but the person that came up to you that said, I just don't think they want to be here. And that's not true. Like you said, it's not true. Any addiction is masking a deeper pain.
Yes.
And so that's what you need to know, is that the addiction is a symptom to a much deeper root cause. And so whether that's drugs, whether that's alcohol, whether that's porn, whether it's anything else, it's a deeper trauma, deeper pain that needs to be addressed. So you just saying that they don't want to be here, that's absolutely not the case. Not necessarily a wrong thought, because their actions indicate that they don't, but that's not the case. So just wanted to pull those out. But one of the things that was coming to mind for me as you've spoken or throughout this conversation has been, it's almost as if brain pain of alcoholism or alcoholics establishes multiple personalities. Do you think that's true?
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. The reason I giggle is because my husband, if he was here, he would have a look on his face that everybody would be laughing at. He would call me the alternative Heather. And
well, that's a nice, I can think of a lot of different names. That's a pretty nice one for.
Yeah. When he would say that, when I was under the influence, I didn't find it very funny, but I very much so. Like, I get nervous when I go back into my Google Photos and I come across videos of past that December 5th of 2019, anything in the past of that. I get nervous because you can hear it in my voice. You can see it in my eyes. I'm not a combative person at all. Like, Amos he's like, you'd go upstairs, I'd go down. It's like, he would do everything he could. He'd walk in the house and he could hear my voice, and within 2 words know whether he didn't realize how much I was drinking, but he could tell that the alternative Heather was present. And me being a deep-seated woman of faith, like, I really, really believe that the alcohol brings out this spirit of just evil. It's people would say, I can't drink whiskey, or I can't drink vodka or tequila. Like, they have a specific liquor that they can't drink because they turn into somebody who someone else doesn't like, their spouse or whoever. That's a real thing. Like, it messes with your brain, Josh. So, like, the neuroscience and your spirit man, it's like the brain, your faith and all the different things. It's like, there's so much wiring going on that's being short circuited with that poison. And so you can't think straight. You can't walk straight. You can't even move your hands the same. Your lips on like, when I would talk, Amos would say your lips, lack of lips, but he would say, he'd be like, they don't even move right. Like, so yeah, yes, you become a totally different person.
That was good. But, so it's just interesting when you say this because I live in Wisconsin, as you know, and we have a drinking culture here. Well, in the Midwest in general, but Wisconsin, it's really prevalent, as there's only 8 counties out of the top 50 in the country that of top 50 drunkest counties, only 8 reside outside Wisconsin. There might be a couple in South Dakota, but like it's, and we wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And yet some of the DUI laws here are some of the worst, like meaning like they're not stiff enough, and people are getting 5th and 6th OWIs and they're killing people. And judges, like there's not stiff enough penalties, and yet we have this drinking culture as a whole. And you know what's interesting to me is, so I don't have any alcoholics in my family.
Wow.
You know, fortunately in that respect. And so I don't have that gene. And so, but it's interesting to me is the first time I did 75 hard was last year. And there, I got to like day 45 and I was like, I haven't been 45 days straight without a drink since I was about 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I was 41 going on 42 last year.
Yeah.
At the time I did 75 hard for the first time. I had this epiphany. I was like, holy shit. You know, so that's, you know, 16, 20, like I was looking at like 23, I was like 20 plus years. Going on 25 years of not having 45 days straight without and like, nah, I would have a bourbon or a glass of wine or something of that nature. I wasn't like getting drunk every night, but just the fact that I had ingrained so much in my habitual life to have a drink when I came home was like, it was a huge epiphany. And I think that there's more people like that. I think that we just need to, in general, normalize not drinking.
Yes.
Just in general, like where it has become such a part of, you think about the Super Bowl ads, how many are liquor or beer? We think about all the Facebook ads, the parties that we go to, whether it's St. Patty's Day, whether it's Mother's Day brunch, like there's Bloody Marys and mimosas. There's like literally everything is ingrained to our culture that alcohol has to be present at the thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's at everything. So in the hardest part, like for me, I can be around it. There are others who cannot. If they smell it, if they're around it, it is a major, major trigger for them. For me, I can be around it and go to a bar, even though I don't even really enjoy the bar. Never have. Even when I was drinking, I didn't enjoy the bar. I wasn't a bar person, but there's just like this, like you said, this culture where it excludes anyone and everyone who now can't be around it. They want to still be around fellowship and community, but because it's so ingrained in everything, they really do have to find different groups and different people that don't drink. And where I live, there's no mocktail bar. And just recently, someone that's in recovery in our area is starting a mocktail bar because the recovery community is pretty big in the place that I'm from. And I am so grateful for that. People are really, they're getting into this new, beautiful place of kind of honoring sobriety. And I wish there was more of it. I really do, because like, how great did you feel, Josh, after not drinking at all?
For 75 days is the most clear my brain has been. So I did last year over 150 days without a sip of alcohol in the day, which is again, most I had ever done since I was 17.
Yep.
And it's just crazy to think about that. And how clear you, like you said, like how clear you are mentally. There's no brain fog.
Oh.
I mean, nothing. Like you just are clear, operating on a different level. And so it also makes you think about like our government and other things that are in the media that are pumping out all these alcohol commercials and making it a part of our normal society. Is like, they know, they have the science, just like we have the science.
Yep.
Like we can read about it. There's not a damn thing good about alcohol ever really published in modern day science that'll tell you that there's one good thing that's going to come from it.
They tried for a while saying that one glass of wine, or was it like a glass or two of wine,
healthy. Yeah.
Was healthy. They've come back and retract that. They have said there is nothing good about alcohol. And I listened to Huberman Labs. Are you familiar with that?
Yep. Andrew's great.
Okay. So listening to him, I am so grateful for the information. There's a specific episode, I think there's like 2 or 3 in a row, where he talks in detail about alcohol and what it does to your body and your psyche and everything, just across the board, anatomy, alcohol and what it does. And after listening to that, I was like, man, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that people are talking about this. And it's becoming more of a thing that people are talking about. I mean, the Sober Curious book, I don't even know who wrote that, or I wouldn't necessarily, I want to read it for educational purposes or just for a little bit of research. But I've heard in the recovery world, there's a few people that have gotten in conversation. I don't know if this is more of a general thing across all the recovery world, but it's actually a little bit maddening to them, because it's life or death for us, right? Like if I were to pick up another drink and get back into my addiction, it's either we quit or we die. So, and that is putting it very bluntly. It's very harsh, but because we don't have an off switch, if we do not turn it off, it will kill us.
So it's a reality. It's
100%.
Like it is just a reality. It is what it is.
It is a reality. And so those who are sober curious and read the book, and they almost, it's kind of like, you go ahead and be curious. Go ahead, be curious, stop drinking. It's great that you have the option to do that. So that's kind of the mindset in the recovery world of that book. Whereas for me, I'm like, man, write whatever you got to write to get people curious about sobriety and not drinking. I don't care what you put out there. Like, let's get any information we can into the hands of those who are using it as a crutch, or are including it at every family function, and every single time people get together, it's like, hey, you bring yours, I'll bring mine, you bring yours. And it's like, have you ever just tried without? Because it's fun. Like, it's still fun. Like, I love being sober because I'm more fun. I'm so much more secure with who I am, the conversations I have. I add more value to every room I walk into, because I'm not looking over my shoulder and wondering how I'm acting, or if I've had too much, or, there's a lot of insecurities that come with drinking, and it just spirals. It brings on anxiety. It brings on the next morning, the uh-ohs, like, what did I do? Or who did I do? Or, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that goes into
the Sunday scaries.
Yeah. The baggage, man, the baggage that comes with alcohol. It messes with your brain. So,
Well, speaking of brain, for those out there that are listening who feel that they have or are losing a loved one to brain pain, what advice would you have for them?
Don't give up on them. Don't turn your back on them. Working in the mental health and addiction world, and just in general, I work in ministry work. There's a lot of pain that is put on. Like I said, there's not a single person that doesn't get hurt in our path when we're actively in this world of, it's a very selfish disease. And so with that pain, I've had family members who have stuck with their husbands all the way up until, or wives all the way up until their death. There's a codependency issue thing too, like, but to not give up on them, but to also not enable them. Like, I'm grateful that Amos never enabled me. When I got out of treatment, there were 5 months there when things were really, really awesome. This is a little bit of a rabbit hole. Sorry, Josh, to detour from your question, but the counselor that I had in treatment said, don't worry about Heather if things were to go bad again. Heather has a new toolkit that she'll be able to get through it, and she won't go to drinking when things are bad. You need to worry about Heather when things are good. When the world just feels bright and cheery and the sun starts shining and it warms up in the spring and the summer. Because I like to drink. I like to have fun. I love being the life of the party. It's that habit, right? That I automatically start to associate alcohol with sun and friends and a margarita on the patio. And I hadn't lived without it yet, right? So it was winter into spring, into summer. And sure enough, it was a beautiful summer May day. And I was like, oh, like I feel good. I feel really good. Like my body feels good. My brain feels good. And I decided I needed to go get some corn from the grocery store and went through and bought a bottle of peppermint schnapps. And when my husband met me in the hallway after shucking corn out in the backyard, he was like, hey, and he stopped me and he looked me right in the eye and he said, you've been drinking, haven't you? And I was like, crap, like busted. And that was an awful day. It was terrible. My whole world got flipped upside down again. I thought he was going to put me back in treatment. Like it was like, went from being on a high to just for a half a bottle of peppermint schnapps. Like it was so not worth it, but I'm grateful for that day because my husband looked at me and he said, there is a line in the sand. And this is the line that we will not cross. I will not cross it in our marriage. I will not cross it for our kids. And we're going to agree upon it. And I needed that. I needed for him and I to set this, like, no more. It's not if you do, it's when you do, this will happen. In case, just speaking it into existence. And I've never crossed that line because I never, ever want to lose my husband or kids. That is my life through and through. And I love them so much. And, but when it comes to those who have lost their mind, they've physically aren't there. So easily I could have gone down that path again. Right. Just so quickly, that taste on your lips. It's crazy how all of a sudden but he didn't let that happen. And I didn't let that happen. But Amos would never have given up on me. He says over and over, like, divorce is not an option. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if it means we separate if and when it happens, but divorce is not an option. Now, some people don't have that option, right? When it comes to if there's physical abuse or there's some other underlining things that happen when alcohol is introduced to the alcoholic. I know that there's lots of different scenarios, Josh. So I never want to ever blanket like this is what I would do, because everyone's story is different. But just not giving up on the person, really, because man, that's when they lose all hope. They've lost family. They've lost all hope. There's nothing else to live for. They will drink themselves to death.
Yeah. So I want to flip it real quick, because I was thinking about Mother's Day weekend. I saw this term used quite a bit in social media posts yesterday. What's the power behind the Supermom image?
The power behind Supermom image.
Well, and what would you like to say to moms out there who are feeling less than super, I guess? Because what I think is, when I think of that, is everyone wants to toss out the Supermom image. And I think that women feel a pressure to live up to that image. And so with that pressure could cause more to drink or to look for an outlet, because they don't feel like they're living up to that image or ideal.
Supermom image is not a place that I ever want to be. We as women, we have so much going on. Like, so do men. We all have a lot going on. But as far as every one of us is built for a very specific reason. Like, God put each of us individually on this earth for a specific reason. Motherhood and fatherhood is such a privilege and such an honor. And there's 50,000 books out there, right? On how to parent, how to be a wife, how to be a best friend, how to be present over present over perfect. I mean, there's so much literature out there, and believe me, I've tapped into multiple of those. I can't lie. I don't like to read books, but I like to listen to them. And I think everyone has an answer for us, but ultimately, Josh, the super mom, we all have our powers and they're all different. I do not pretend at all anymore. I used to. It's exhausting. It is beyond exhausting. And some of my most favorite people are super moms. Like I just said that they don't exist. And then I said I have a couple, but where there's superpowers and they're super moms, like what they do, I would never do. Up until 1 o'clock, I have a dear friend who will be up until 1 making Rice Krispie bars to make sure that her snack for her kid that next day is Rice Krispie bars, homemade, and they're shapes like a bat. And they have, like they're just perfect. And I was like, never, I would never do that. But it's what she does.
Must be her love language. Yeah.
What?
That must be her love language.
For real.
Little bat Rice Krispie treats.
Yeah, and it is her love language. It's how she operates. She loves to do that. And so what I have been doing is loving every single aspect of that, versus a lot of moms will be like, oh, there she goes again, out momming me and making me look bad. Nope. That is not the case. Like, she is rocking it as a mom in that area. You're rocking it as a mom in this area. I wished I could slow down more. I wished I wasn't going 100 miles an hour every day, all day long. Like my husband jokes, he's like, you look really sexy when you sit down. Like, is that a really nice way of saying sit your ass down? Yes, it is. So
might actually get you to sit down if he tells you look sexy and sitting down.
Just sit down. But I want more than anything for moms to just enjoy their kids. Like, this should not be a competition. It never should have been a competition.
Thank you for saying that.
And
ladies, actually ladies and men, but I think it is on the ladies' side more, because I've actually seen this. And I was just talking to another male friend of mine about this, about a friend of ours who is competitive.
Yep.
And like none of the rest of us are competing. And it's just interesting to watch, like what competition are we in? Yeah. I didn't know we were in one, because I'm a pretty damn competitive person. If I knew we were in one, I might no, I'm not competing in life. If we're on a field, yes, if we're playing a sport, I'm going to compete. But as far as family life and who has the biggest this and who has the best drink and who has the like it doesn't matter. Like, if people realize that. And then the showing up piece, I loved that you said that. So I told you before, I was just at a dance competition all weekend. Would I prefer to be playing golf? Yes. Yep, I would.
Yep.
But what matters is that I'm there for my girls. And actually, I noticed plenty of dads that weren't there. And it's Mother's Day weekend, which, again, they probably shouldn't have had a dance competition on Mother's Day weekend. Even my mom's like, what the heck were they thinking? Anyhow. So there's thousands of kids there competing, and moms and dads, but far more moms than dads there. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, do I like dance and all that? Like, do I like being here at this competition? Our whole weekend shot? No. But do my girls love that I'm there? Yep. Does it matter to them that I'm there? Yep.
Josh, there is a beautiful, the showing up and being present. So there's another podcast I love listening to called it's Adam Young's. It's The Places We Find Ourselves, and it's neuroscience and faith colliding. And so he talks a lot about scientifically what happens to us and the nurture and nature and just all the things as a child. And you alluded to it a little bit earlier about the pain or trauma in our past, and which makes us who we are today. And a lot of times we go, people will say, don't look in the past, don't look in the rearview mirror, only look forward. And the truth is we have to, we actually, if there's any trauma in our past, which a lot of it we don't even realize is caused from the way we were raised. the things we may not have received as children that we are now looking for as adults. The lack of in our past, we are over excessively putting in place now in our future. And we're like, well, why do I feel like I have to have a clean house? Why do I feel like I need to please everybody, the people pleasing or all the stuff? The answers are behind us of almost all of it, of the way we were raised. And it is not at all shameful on our parents. It's just our needs of who we are individually and how we live those out today. So when you talk about that with your kids, there is nothing that your kids let me rephrase that. When they look at you as an adult, or when they're adults, they will say, thank you for being there. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for always making me feel loved and making me feel like I was the most important thing on the face of the earth. And that is your forever legacy, forever legacy. Because then that gets passed down to kids and kids and kids. And yet you look at how much time and energy we put into other friends or into volunteering for other people or other families. And then our kiddos are like, well, what about me? Why wasn't mom at that track meet? Or it's not saying we have to be at every sport or be at everything, but you are spot on, Josh. Your girls will not forget you being there on this past weekend and hearing you cheer and hearing your voice and the hugs and the high fives. And that all matters. It all matters. And that to me was a big piece of the puzzle of why I was going to take my life that day. Because if I couldn't be present and that alcohol was going to consume everything of that I was and make me be a mom that I didn't want to be, it wasn't fair to them. Like that's what I kept playing over and over in my head. Right. So now as a sober mom, all I do is love on them. I look them in their eyes every single day and I tell them how special and beautiful they are inside and out. It's so fun to be present all the time with them. And yes, I get busy, but to truly every night scratch their backs and be there and tell them how loved they are. I get to do that. Like that is an honor that I get to do that for my kids now with a sober mind. And man, there's nothing better. There's truly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just want to tell people out there too, because Heather still is this, but if you're the life of the party drunk, you're likely the life of the party sober.
Yep.
And
it's
because
true.
When I first met Heather, before knowing this story, we were in a bar.
Yeah. We were.
She didn't have a drink in her hand, but she was still as lively and lovely as ever without a drink in her hand. So
Thank you, Josh.
It's just one of those things I'd tell just for you out there. If you think you're the life of the party drunk, you're probably also the life of the party sober. You just haven't given your sober self a chance yet.
You are stating a fact. Yes.
So
I
cool.
was scared of who I was going to be sober. I really was. I was like, I don't even really know what that's like. I mean, yes, I didn't walk around drunk for the last 44 years or whatever, I think my first drink was when I was 16. So I have to subtract some there, but, I thought about it all the time. I thought about when was going to be the next party, when was going to be the next family reunion, what could I bring? It's when you relieve yourself of all those thoughts and, planning and just manipulating the alcohol in your life, when that is gone, you have so much more time to focus in, like being at the bar and meeting you, Josh. I was able to like focus in and say, hey, like, who are you? Where do you come from? Like, what's your story? And to be there and to soak all that up, that's where I get my energy. That's where I get my fill in my cup, is getting to know other people now. And before I couldn't get to know other people because I was too concerned about my drink being empty and going to the bar and getting another drink or making sure your drink was full or, it's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah. And that brain fog clears as well. So you can just completely be you and completely be present with those that are in front of your face.
Yep.
All right. So last question, and I never prep anyone from this, so I'm always curious as to what comes up. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
Oh, a popular belief.
Unpopular.
Unpopular belief.
Yeah.
Oh,
A hill you die on.
well, my bold stance on being a believer in Jesus Christ is that a lot of people will ask me how I stay sober. And I say very bluntly that it is my relationship with Jesus Christ. And a lot of people in the recovery world will try 50,000 different things, different meditations, they're different, and yet they will say, I can't stop. Like, what do you do? And my answer is simply, that is how I stay sober. That is my focus. That is my prayer every morning. So a lot of people don't like that answer. They think that there is some other cure out there, and I will stick to that until the day I die.
Well, it's powerful because it's what's worked for you, and you can give others that perspective. That they can use it or not, but it's what's worked for you and is true to you.
Yeah.
Here's one. I actually haven't answered this question for myself on the show, but I'm going to today. One of my unpopular beliefs is that what happened during COVID can never happen again. Meaning that we cannot shut our country down and completely isolate people. And I'll tie it back to our story today, because the way that Alcoholics Anonymous works and recovering alcoholics work is by paying it forward and being in community with each other. And how much lift do you get being a recovering alcoholic by helping others?
It's what I live for now.
It's part of the program, right? Not only part of the program, but how much joy and fulfillment does it give you?
It's every morning I wake up, and that is what I say. Like, Lord, send me out, put the people in my path that I can just give hope to, that I can shine, that I can love on. And if I wasn't able to do that, to go back to your unpopular belief, like, if I wasn't able to hug people and that would be awful. That'd be terrible. Yeah.
So that's part, and also what happened with our children and how far they're being set back because of the isolation. But I just it came to mind today because we were talking about alcoholism, and I know that I've met so many recovering addicts that I'm just like, I know that to be part of the program and know it to be true for all of you, that like this human connection is part of who we are. We're gifted and endowed by God to be in connection with others. And when that was taken away from us, again, I believe that was purposeful, and they knew what they were doing to isolate us. So that's why it's an unpopular belief, because I think most would not necessarily agree with me on it. But that's my stance. So, all right, we're a little bit over on time. I really appreciate everyone hanging in with us today because Heather poured her heart out. Hey, by the way, where can others, should they want to follow you, book you to speak, reach out to you for any help or guidance for a loved one? Where is the best method or way to do that?
Well, I don't, do you have show notes? Will you have show notes for this at all?
We'll have show notes, yeah.
Okay. So I'll send you some of the best connection, but we also, my husband and I started a podcast called Fortitude. And on there, I have information and just how to reach out to us from that. And that's been a really fun project for my husband and I, because we love sharing people's stories of fortitude and any kind of adversity people have gone through. It's, I have found healing in telling my story. So I will continue to tell people to share their story as often as they can, because they just never know whose life they might be able to save. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Twitter. I just resigned from my full-time position, Josh. Remember me sitting at the table that day and telling you, like, so after 10 and a half years, it's time. I'm breaking out from, I'm going to go out on my own and take on speaking more often. I have I think six speaking engagements lined up yet this year. And I love encouraging audience. I love inspiring people to be a better version of themselves. So I'll give you all that information so they can tap into it on your
awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, we will get that in show notes. So we appreciate you coming on and sharing the vulnerable story. It's never easy to share that, but I know it's part of your passion because it helps you, and it's to help others. So Spartans, you know what to do. Share the heck out of this episode. Get Heather's word out there. I know it will help many. And remember, good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.